Hi, I'm Katie Crane, and this is the Pilates Lounge. Hi, this is Katie Crane. I am the Pilates professional, and this is the Pilates Lounge. Today is episode 10. Oh my gosh, I'm a little bit excited about that. You know, I've been thinking about doing this podcast for a couple of years, and I'm an avid podcast listener, and I'm also an avid reader. I love learning. And so I really hope that if you haven't already listened to the backlog of episodes that I've recorded already, that you do take time to do so. And when you take time to listen to an episode, if you get something out of it, I would love to hear from you. It's so important. You know what happens, and I'm realizing this already, is I'm here in my podcast lounge conversing with a world that I don't get to see. And it's almost like talking to myself, which in a way is quite cathartic, and I'm really enjoying doing it. But I really would love to know if these episodes are touching you in any way and just how far they're reaching. Now, today's episode, I've also been thinking about for a little while. I've got a lot of ideas as far as the Pilates Lounge is concerned, but I decided to record this one today because I worked yesterday with a pretty new client, and there were so many things that she is experiencing in her body right now that I remember experiencing in my body. And it took me back to these feelings of uncertainty, of vulnerability, of self-failure. And in turn, because of those feelings of really struggling to love yourself. This episode I'm dedicating to the psychology of pain. Now, most of us will experience pain at some stage in our life. And I'm not just talking about a finger being cut or a paper cut or, accidentally getting your hair tied in your hair tie. I'm talking about pain that really slows you down. Pain that is consistent and persistent and changes your life in ways that don't feel good, that may stop you from doing things that you want to do. And when you get stopped from doing things that you want to do, quite often the people around you also are prevented from moving forwards as well. This client that I worked with yesterday, her and her husband had a walking trip in April. And yesterday she confessed to me that she's cancelled her trip. He's already cancelled it twice, or they've already cancelled it twice together. And now she's come to the realization that she's simply not going to be physically ready to be able to go on a walking trip. And so her husband is going with somebody else. The look on her face when this client told me was one of resignation. You know, she would have thought about this for a long time. They've already cancelled the trip twice. He's finally going with somebody else, and she's learning to accept that. So instead, she's going to go visit her sister and her children. She's made other plans and she's dealing with that. But the look on her face reminded me of how far I've come in my body, how much Pilates has offered me physically, emotionally, and psychologically, and the important role that I play in these people's lives. And if you're a Pilates professional, the important role that you play in people's lives. And if you're a Pilates lover, having a better understanding of this journey, I'm hoping will both give you insight, hope, and potentially purpose. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background story. I don't think I've told my story before, but I do tell it a little bit every now and then to anybody who will listen. I found Pilates quite serendipitously. I had been told in my mid-20s that my spine was that of an 80-year-old. So I'd had x-rays and MRIs with a spinal specialist in the city I was living in. After living with chronic pain for as long as I can remember, I remember my mother taking me to different therapists when I was a child, probably from when I was about 10 to 12 years old, and then anywhere up from there. I was always seeing somebody for my back pain. Throughout that entire time, so from when I was pretty young, right up until this moment in time when I'm in my mid-20s, I'd been told many stories that interwove. I'd been told that I had a weak core. I'd been told that I was lazy. I'd been told that I wasn't doing enough. I was told that I wasn't doing the exercises properly. I was told that I needed to change my lifestyle. And now, in my mid-20s, I was told that there was no hope. Those words rung in my stomach. They made me feel physically sick at the time. And even when I think back to that moment, it brings up a nauseating feeling in my body. So I got these MRI and the x-rays back. I'm standing in the clinic with this spinal specialist, and they're showing me all the degeneration that I've got in my spine and telling me unequivocally that I'm going to have to stop doing all of the activities that I'm currently doing. Now, partly because as a child, I was told that I had to do all of this exercise, that I had a weak core, I now was living a super active lifestyle. I would ride my bike to and from work. I worked at a swimming pool pretty much every day. I swam 4 kilometers. I had rollerblades, so I'd often either ride my bike or rollerblade to wherever I was going. I had dogs and I lived at the beach, so I was always at the beach walking, swimming. I'd taken up surfing. So I was doing all the things that I had pretty much been told to do growing up because I needed, in inverted commas, a stronger core. And then there I was, sat in this clinic with this specialist being told that I had to now stop all of those pursuits that I was doing because they were doing damage to my spine, that I had the spine of an 80-year-old and that I was never going to be able to have children because my body could not deal with having children, that I could possibly be looking down the barrel of spinal surgery. And potentially, if this degeneration kept getting any worse, then I may be disabled. When I was told that, I just remember this blackness surrounding me. But I also felt deep inside of me a bit of a rebellion. I won't swear on here, but when I think of it, I think of swear words. But I could feel my rebellious side, of which I've always had, really starting to fire up. So this person was telling me basically that my life was over. So what did I do? I quit my job at the swimming pool. I was working seasonally anyway, so I quit my job at the swimming pool and decided to take my surfboards and go on one last big world tour. So I was going to go spend time surfing for as long as what I wanted to, or as long as what my body could hold up. That's what I was thinking. Generally, when I went surfing, it would really hurt my back, but I also loved surfing. So when I left the country and I went over to Central America, literally slept either in my board bag or in a hammock, which was probably not the best thing for my back if I'd spoken to an expert. But I didn't care because I was rebelling. So I pretty much went camping and was surfing every single day. Well, a miracle started to happen. I didn't have the same pain as what I was having when I was at home working at my job at the pool. I felt that the more I surfed, the better I felt, even though normally surfing would hurt my back. And even though I was camping in very, very poor conditions, I never once had a bed, my back was pretty good. Well, along the way, I met my now husband. We were both camping on the same beach in Mexico, and he invited me to go back and visit him where he was living at the time, which was Montana in the States. He was living in Yellowstone working as a fly fishing guide. He was like, you should come visit me. Well, I actually didn't know anything about America. I had 3 surfboards under my arm and I was traveling with 2 other girls. So the guy that I met, he left to go back to do his fly fishing job and I couldn't stop talking about him. Eventually, the 2 girls that I was traveling with kicked me out of the group and told me that I had to go visit him because they were so sick of hearing about him. So back in those days, you couldn't just book a ticket online. I literally had to go to the travel agent, book about 3 flights to get out of Mexico and up to Yellowstone, up to Montana. Got off the plane, wasn't even sure if I was going to remember what this guy looked like. I was in a very, very different scene than being on the beach in Mexico. There I was in the middle of the mountains with 3 surfboards under my arm, and this guy that I'd met for about 2 weeks literally picking me up, handing me a snow jacket because I only had clothing for like Central America surfing trip. He handed me a snow jacket and said, come on, we got to go. The snow is coming and the mountain may be closing. So we've got to get in the car and get going. So went up the mountain. To cut the story short, I went from Central America to America and I simply didn't have enough money. And so I got some voluntary work working with horses. Of course, I'd lived a very active life. I'd grown up in a place where we were into downhill mountain biking. I had ridden a horse when I was a kid, but not forever. But I rocked up at this ranch and the family asked me if I could ride a horse. And I was like, yeah, in my mind, of course I can ride a horse. I ride a mountain bike. What's the difference? So, of course, they put me on this horse that's pretty green. It's only just been broken in, but it hasn't been ridden by customers yet because we were a riding outfit. And they took me up into the mountains for a 2-hour horse ride through the mountains. It was insane. I actually don't know how I survived, but I did. The horse was so sweaty because the horse was still very anxious and I was quite anxious, so we probably fed off each other. But anyway, we got back to the ranch and the girls believed my story that I could ride horses, and there I was working every day at the ranch. And if you've ever seen an American saddle, they're massive. Like, obviously, I'm in Australia, so an Australian saddle is quite small. I think pretty much anybody could pick up an Australian saddle. When you look at an American saddle, it is this outfit that is so big. And there I was every single day putting 10 saddles onto horses and then taking clients riding through the mountains for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hour ride, and we'd do 2 or 3 of them a day. So I was not only always on horseback, but always carrying saddles. Well, my back got really sore again. So there I was with that familiar pain that I had run away from. That familiar pain came back and I needed help. So I went to a physical therapist and they recommended that I go to a Pilates class. I'd never heard of Pilates. In Australia, it was definitely around, but it wasn't common. I had tried yoga, but yoga just told me, kind of how tight I was and how incapable I was. Anyway, I tried this Pilates class and I remember distinctly the very first session I ever went to, knowing that this was my future. I couldn't tell you exactly what happened. And it's not like my pain was gone immediately, nothing like that. But I just knew from the entire experience that I was having, and it was a mat class taught by a very good instructor who, FYI, was actually my now husband, who was that guy that I met in Mexico. It was my husband's ex-girlfriend at the time was the Pilates instructor, but she was very good. And I just knew. I knew that this was a life-changing experience. In any case, fast forward a few months, we leave Montana. His fishing season is done for the year. The horses are getting taken to the lower part of the mountain because the snow will start to roll in soon. We decided to come back to Australia and I did my teacher training. And here I am now, 20 odd years later. Now, the reason that I'm telling you all of this entire story, is just to give you a little bit of backstory to where I came from. So I was literally told by experts that there was no hope. Today, I'm now pushing the big 5-0. Today, I comfortably ride my bike, surf, stand-up paddleboard, water ski, just started jogging this year, and my back does not experience pain. My body does not experience pain that I was experiencing when I was heaps fitter, heaps stronger back in my mid-20s. So I have learned a heck of a lot about the psychology of pain and the experience of pain. And I guess that's almost become my forte. It's one of my superpowers, is working with people who are in pain and working with them to learn how to get out of that painful experience. And I say painful experience because experiencing pain is not because of the injury. I'm going to say that again. The pain we experience is not necessarily because of the injury we have got. We work with this all the time. I see this in the studio all the time. Somebody comes into the studio and sometimes they bring their reports or whatever, and they say, oh, I've got, let's use back pain. I've got this pain in my lower back because I've got a herniation in my disc in L3, L4, or because I've got degeneration in my spine, or because my facets are inflamed, or because I've blown out a disc, because I've got a disc bulge. These are all common things that we hear. The thing is, we don't know for certain that that is what is causing the pain. Let me explain this more. Say somebody comes in with their report, they've gone and had their MRI or their X-ray, and they've been shown that, yes, in fact, you have this in your spine. Well, they went to that place because they were in pain. And then this has been the result of investigating that experience. But what about somebody who does not have pain? The person who does not have pain is not going to get the MRI or the X-ray. So how do we know that they also don't have disc herniation, spinal degeneration, inflamed facets? Well, we simply don't, because nobody goes to get the MRI or the scans, nobody goes to get those scans unless they're in pain. So we don't know that that is the issue. I was told by the experts that there was nothing that I could do, that I had to learn to live with my foreseeable disabled future. I was told that I needed to change what I was doing, which was a lot of exercise, and just accept what I was given. And there was no reason for me to have a degenerated spine. There really wasn't. I was fit and healthy. I had a good diet. I was doing all the things. I guess I was just throwing, it was a flip of a coin. Some people would say that it's genetics, but we don't even know if that is true. We actually do not know. So when somebody comes into the studio, the issue is not that they have a blown out disc, spinal degeneration, or inflamed facets. The issue is that they are experiencing pain. Sometimes people get fixated on what they've been told by somebody, and that becomes a part of their story. So when somebody comes into the studio and I work with them and they've got pain, of course, I always listen to what they've got going on. Sometimes that will give me a window into their experience, a window into the psychology of what they're dealing with. But I would never use that pathological information as black and white. It's not all the information. Things that we do talk about in the studio is, what's your diet like? What sort of food are you eating? In my mind, I'm wondering, are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough branch chain amino acids? What's your water intake like? First thing in the morning, are you drinking coffee or are you drinking water? And with that water intake, how active are you throughout the day? Are you sitting in aircon or are you sitting out in the heat? Are you walking, riding, swimming, all that sort of stuff? Or are you sitting down all day? So there's so many different things that go into creating an understanding of what people are experiencing. On top of that, I also want to know, what's your relationships like right now? Are you married? Do you have children? Are you working? Do you have a social circle? What are your sleeping habits like? Are you getting out in the sun enough? Yes, the sun is good for us. Are you happy in yourself? Are you happy enough in yourself that you're actually taking care of yourself? There are so many conversations that I start to have in the studio to start to put somebody's self-belief systems in front of me, I suppose. So the injury does not matter. What matters is that they are experiencing pain. And as somebody might tell me that they're coming to me to fix the injury, but in fact, what they're coming to me for is to help sort out the pain. Because if you have an injury and you're not in pain, what does it matter? If you have disc degeneration but it doesn't hurt you, what does it matter? Well, it doesn't. Only the pain matters. Now, pain, of course, is a positive. Now, we often see pain as a negative, but without pain receptors, we might not be here. For example, without pain receptors, when you were a kid and you put your hands on top of the stove and your pain receptors were not working, then maybe you wouldn't have hands right now. If your pain receptors weren't working and you cut yourself when you're making dinner, you cut off your finger, well, maybe you would not be here right now because you would have bled out. So pain is a positive thing. Pain is the body's way of communicating so that we stay alive. Chronic pain is the issue. And pain really comes from the brain. Now, there's a few resources that I think are really, really important for us to look at as Pilates professionals, but also if you're somebody who lives with pain, especially chronic pain, then I also recommend you check out these guys. There's a group and they've created a book called Explain Pain. It's not a new book. It's been out for a long, long time. They also do courses. You can do online and face-to-face courses to better understand the psychology of pain or the mechanics of pain. But in those courses, we start to learn, A, that pain is positive, but B, that pain is in the brain. So I said in my last episode, in episode 9, that the brain is like a catalogue. So the brain is always collecting information and holding on to that information to then pull out experiences that we have from that catalogue and then tell the body what needs to happen, ultimately for us to survive. That's happening all day long, every day. So if you have something happen in your life and it injures you or it does cause pain, right? So your receptors tell your brain, well, hang on, I just fell off my bike and the position that I landed in did hurt my back because, maybe it squished your disc and it did squish a nerve and that was painful. That right there and then is the brain taking some information and saying, hey, well, actually, when we bend into that shape, it's probably not the best thing for our spine because the spine has nerves that then feed the muscles, and those nerves need to have clear ways for those muscles to get the information that they need so that we can keep going. So that type of pain is important. But then the brain may view that movement as a danger zone. So then every time you move in that direction, if you were to bend in that direction, then the brain might say, hang on, I know this movement. And in the past, I experienced pain. So I'm going to create that pain now in the body to stop you from doing that as a survival mechanism. And then you go and do that movement doing something else. Maybe you're picking up a box or putting down a box or putting something in the car, and the brain perceives that as the same movement. So then, again, you feel the back pain. So then you start to have these painful experiences when you're doing certain things. The brain then continues to perceive that movement as a negative movement, and every time you do it, it's going to hurt. And then those muscles keep tightening up as a response. And then maybe you end up with chronic tightness or chronic pain, long-term pain. When somebody comes into the studio, instead of getting fixated on the injury or on what is wrong with the body, what we do is try and create a positive experience. So we want to flip the coin. So we want to go from having a negative, painful experience to having a positive experience. And sometimes it might not really even be an exercise. It might just be something that we're doing. So, for example, when I worked with this lady yesterday and she has a really sore back, she's also been told she's got a very weak core, all this sort of stuff. I mean, I can see that there's some movement patterns that may not be serving her well. But when she comes into the studio, we've worked together 4 times. And yesterday when she came in, I asked her what her feedback was from the last session. And she said, I did not have pain for the entire day. And I have not experienced that for about 2 years. So that was a huge leap. And you know what it did? It confirmed to her that when she comes to the studio, she's now in a safe space. So her brain now perceives coming to the studio as a positive experience. So already the chemicals, because pain, the experience of pain is your neuroreceptors sending chemicals into the body to feel pain. to feel anxiety, maybe a bit of an adrenaline rush, a bit of cortisol, these stress responses in the body. So now, because she had an experience of not having pain for the day, well, A, she thinks I'm a magician, which I'm not at all. All I did was listen to her, observe her, and then give her some potential strategies for us to explore. So all I actually did was get her into some positions and asked for feedback from her. So for her body, the pain is in her back. I understand that because I lived with that as well. The key is to get into a position, and for her, it was laying on her back with her feet over a big ball, and just practice and learn how to allow for your back extensors to relax. Now, that can be difficult if those back extensors are constantly on because your body has been put into this state of agitation for such a long period that then those muscles don't know when to switch off because first they're working as a defense mechanism, and then they end up working anticipating that something is going to be happening that is negative. So sometimes just laying on your back with your legs up over something and allowing for those muscles to relax so that then you don't feel like they're so switched on. Once she succeeded with that, and even that took a little while, right? We did some different breathing techniques. The whole time I'm often talking about, this is what's happening in your body, talking about diaphragm, some breathing. We practice a few different breathing techniques. I just keep getting feedback from her. We move a little bit, maybe just side to side with the knees slightly. How does that feel? Does that feel better or worse? All of this sort of stuff is just dialogue, constant dialogue from me to her and then from her to me. And I'm just taking every little bit of information that she's telling me, and I'm taking all of those responses from her whole body. I'm looking at when her body is tensing. I'm looking at the expression in her face, and I'm listening to her voice. So there's a lot of communication going on between us. She might not even realize it because she's so used to going to somebody who just tells her, this is what you got wrong with you, take this or don't do that, and that's it, right? So part of the experience of getting over the pain is feeling that you're in a safe environment, and part of that feeling will come with good communication, good listening, somebody observing you, and somebody giving you space and giving you the time to feel into your own body. We really lack this, especially in our Western culture, of actually taking a moment just to be. We're so set on having answers right now. Give me the pill. Give me the operation. Strap that up. I want now to not feel what I'm feeling. Well, you know what? When you're in pain, normally, unless, of course, you've just had a high-impact accident and something horrific has happened, normally the pain that we feel in our body is, I always think of it like your body was probably whispering to you for a long, long time, but you neglected to listen to those whispers. And eventually, if you don't hear the whispers, then the body will start shouting at you. And by the time you get to the point where you just have this constant back pain and you don't know what's caused it, that's because you did not listen to those whispers. You did not give yourself the time that you deserve to have to recover, to rest, to heal. And then that pain becomes so wound up in your body, and your body actually becomes addicted to the chemicals that produce the pain. Get that? Pain becomes addictive. So the chemicals that produce pain almost carve out like these deep channels in the nervous system. And then the body is almost looking for that. And if you don't receive that, if you don't get that pain sensation, you need to replace it with something else. So that's why for some people, exercise might work because you're replacing that addictive trait of the body seeking out that painful experience with doing something else. For some people, it will be changing their sleep patterns, changing the way they're eating, changing their lifestyle in general. For some people, it will be meditation. For some people, it will be coming to the Pilates studio often because that becomes their safe space. But remember, partly that was just because we take the time to listen, to observe, to create the space for you. Then, once we know that, say, for this client, she was comfortable on her back with her legs over the ball, Well, then I let her know, well, that's a good position for you then, because can you feel that now your back is settled, your back is relatively relaxed? Okay, now we start talking about the abdominals, because those abdominal muscles cannot switch on well when the back is so wound up and so tight. I think of the back extensors in particular are almost like a scaffolding for a building. Scaffolding will keep the building up for a while, but if a big storm comes, then the scaffolding simply is not enough unless you have a foundation. So the foundation are the deep spinal muscles, the deep abdominals, all those deep stabilizing parts of the body. They also have to be working, not just the scaffolding. So once we've learned how to maybe relax the body, maybe breathe a little bit, let some of the tightness go, then we start to activate other muscles and just figure out, well, what about could you activate this without your back coming into it? Because quite often, wherever the pain is, that area there's too much activity in that area. So can you do something as simple as lift the foot off the ground, lower it back down without your back extensors coming, like being the catalyst or the driving force, and potentially you've got to find those tummy muscles to do that. Right, we succeed at that. Now maybe we get onto the reformer and we do something as simple as footwork. But I'm not even teaching this is the footwork that we're doing and I want you to feel it in your legs. I'm teaching this is the footwork that we're doing and I don't want you to feel that you're driving that through your back. So your back is not the catalyst for that driving force. Well, what is it? Quite often the student will ask or the customer will ask, well, you tell me. As long as it's not your back, you tell me where you're feeling it. And then I start to put that together. Sometimes they'll feel it, well, I feel it in my legs. Cool, that's great. Sometimes they really struggle not to feel it, say, in their back. Now, I'm just using the back as an example because it's such a common one. But ultimately, we're doing any movement. So you could do it with the shoulder movement. You show me where can you move the arm that it doesn't cause pain. Doesn't matter how big the movement is. It does not matter. How far can you bend and straighten the leg without it causing the pain in your knee if somebody comes in with a knee pathology? It doesn't matter what I want the end result to be. All I'm trying to do is create a positive experience for the body so the brain then perceives that activity, that experience as a safety mechanism, as a safe experience. Then I send them home with some type of movement that feels good. We've pretty much figured out in those first 2 sessions, this feels good, this doesn't. If it doesn't feel good, you don't do it, just for now, because what we're doing is we're trying to break these long-term cycles. And when I talk about the psychology of pain, most people can deal with the feeling of pain. Most people can deal with, oh yeah, that hurts my back. You know what really gets people down is the psychological aspect of it. It's tiring to be constantly in pain. It's exhausting to have to figure out different ways to do things. For example, if you can't carry your own shopping up the stairs, you've got to figure out what to do. It doesn't feel good to have to ask somebody to help you with everything that you need. We want to be accountable. We want to be able to do things for ourselves. It doesn't make me happy if I don't get to go out dancing with my friends because I know that my body can't deal with it. It makes me really sad that I've got to cancel that holiday that I was going to have with my husband because my body isn't capable of it. But you know what? That didn't happen overnight. It's the saddest thing in the world when somebody tells you that they can't do something that they wanted to do because their body is not capable of doing it. For most of us, we simply did not listen to the whispers. The body is designed to move, and the body is designed to move every single day in all different ranges. We are simply not designed to sit still, to stand still, or for repetitive movement tasks. But especially in Western society, this is what we do. And even, if you travel anywhere in the world now, we're seeing people are sitting down looking at their screens on their phone, even when there's the best sunset in the world right in front of them. They could be walking on the beach. People are sitting, looking at their screen. People are mesmerized by these things, but that's another topic, another conversation. But the body feels pain to let you know that it's in danger and that it needs change. So it's not the injury that is the issue. I want to be very, very clear on that. I don't know if I still have the same spinal degeneration. The reality of it is, I don't care. I don't care if I have the spine of an 80-year-old. What I care is that I can be with my family and do all the fun things, that I can be self-sufficient and not have to ask for help, that I can live my life how I want to live it, doing what it is that I want to do without feeling restricted. That's what matters. So I believe that we need to change the conversation. Rather than be asking, what is the injury? Let's start asking, how are you feeling? What are you feeling today? How is that stopping you? And what can I do to help move you forwards? That's all people need. That's all we need to know to be able to help people. And that's all we need to know for our own body. What can I do today that is going to make me feel better, that I can move towards whatever my goal is? Going on holiday with my husband, going on my surf trip, having a child. By the way, I did end up having a child, despite what the medical experts had told me. And you know what? I was not even in any pain when I was pregnant. In fact, when I was pregnant, I was probably the fittest and the healthiest I've ever been in my entire life. And I was performing some of the most advanced Pilates exercises in my life as well. Our body is absolutely capable of healing from anything and everything. The most adverse and the most diverse experience that you could have health-wise, your body is always moving towards what's called homeostasis. So your body is always moving towards balance. It is the choices that we make in life that prevent our body from coming back to balance. The things that we put into our body, our outside environment, the people that we associate with, the books we read, the things that we look at on television, the things that we're looking at on a screen, our social environment, our work environment. For me, ultimately, I know now that what was giving me a pain in the back when I got to that point where I was really, really struggling was that I was in a job that I felt that was holding me back, and I stayed in that job for 15 years. And by the time I left there, because my body was so broken, in inverted commas, my body broke down because it was the only way I was ever going to leave that job. And partly that's because I'm so competitive that it's like I would not leave, even though I knew that that job was not the best fit for me mentally and emotionally. And so then eventually my body said, you know what? You're not listening to the whispers. Take this. That's what happens. So if you live with pain, or if you're working with people in pain, let's ask more personalized questions, and let's not get so fixated on if anything, we should be using the tests, the scans, the diagnostics as a window of opportunity to make changes, not as that's the end of the line, is what it is. I think that's all I've got for you today. I hope that I didn't go too woo-woo on you. Pain is something I'm so passionate about. And every single day that I work in the studio, and for the years that I've worked in the studio, and even before that when I was working in the fitness industry, every day I meet people who are stuck in the experience that somebody else has given them. So somebody else has said, well, that's because of your knee, that's because of your shoulder, that's because of your spine, that's because of your cancer, that's because of your autoimmune disease. No, those things, those physical experiences in the body are messengers to the body to change what it is that you're doing. And if we can take that information and act on it, then pain can be a positive, empowering experience if we are willing to really stop and listen before the body starts yelling at us. And I'm testament to that. The more I listen to my body, the more I learn about it. And the more I learn about my own body, and this is a takeaway, the more I have learned to love myself. And I'm not talking about just having confidence in myself, but actually to respect myself. And once that happens, then we can truly help others and serve others. Thank you so much for joining me today on this episode, The Psychology of Pain. We will definitely be having more discussions on this because I believe that there are so many different avenues to these discussions, and I don't want to take up your entire day. I think that a short discussion is better than a long one. I hope that you get something out of this, and just know that you can help so many people by opening up your space to them and by teaching them how to listen. Have a great day. I'm Katie Crane, the Pilates professional, and this is the Pilates Lounge. Now, before I finish up today, I just want to remind you, if you have enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you like and share it with your Pilates professional and movement loving friends so that we can get the word out there and really create a community right here in this hub. Be sure to check out my website, thepilatesprofessional.com.au, and have a look if you can find any workshops, which I'm sure you can, that you may be needing right now. Remember, I also do a 6-month reformer teacher training mentor program. I call it a mentor program because I literally personally mentor each student through their own program until they are ready to teach reformer. It's what I specialize in. And I think that this is one of the biggest missing links in our industry right now, is that we have these wonderful diploma level training workshops that people can do to become very comprehensively trained in Pilates. But when it comes to reformer, it's so wishy-washy out there that you could become an instructor online with no personal access to a mentor ever, or you could become a reformer instructor as a stepping stone to diploma level training. So where I come into it is I just do reformer teacher training that is recognised and recommended by the Pilates Association of Australia, which means that my students then become members of PAA. It's super important for our industry, and it's what our students deserve. So if you know somebody who is looking to become a reformer teacher, then this is where you want to send them, the pilatesprofessional.com.au. They can reach out to me. I can have a call with them and see if I have a program that is coming up that is suitable for them. And or I also do a host of online workshops for you to expand your repertoire and your understanding specifically of the Pilates work. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to you listening to the next episode next week. I'm Katie Crane, the Pilates professional.